And joining us now is someone who you probably know from Twitter, or staffer for Senator Tom Coburn, Courtney Shadegg. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I just wanted to, let you give the opportunity to talk about some of the work that you've done, particularly with Senator Tom Coburn, who, as everyone who sort of knows, he passed away this year, and you've sometimes talked about the work that you did. You want to talk about that for our viewers?
Yes. He was a senator. Before that, he was in the House. He is a doctor from Oklahoma. I think one of the kind of most endearing things about him is he loved the fact he was a citizen legislator. So he had another career before he came to DC. And he thinks that that's one of the most important things about what members should do and be, is that they have something they can bring when they go to. I think it's interesting in the age of Trump. We see someone who is in business and now they're running the country, and people are asking themselves, do I want someone like this? Don't I? Trump brings other aspects to that, which I think they question. But my boss, he had an accounting degree. He had a huge background. And working for him, I was able to see when you have experiences in other fields, you are able to look at how the government runs in a much better way. So one of the things that he did was push this out of the Pentagon with Senator McCain, but he also had to work with a bunch of Democrats to get that done because Republicans didn't want to do it. That's just not something you do. And he was the type of guy who is very conservative, but he would always work across the aisle because there were always people who, hey, we agree on this, we can get this. And I value that so much. And he was so brave and so willing to do things that he would take so much heat for. He was called Dr. No, that was his nickname. And He got it because of, we don't hear about it very often. I don't think a lot of people use it. In the Senate, you have holds, and a lot of legislation, I don't know anymore how much passes that way, but a lot of would be passed by UCs, which is unanimous consent, right? So, and a lot of it is, today is going to be the National Peanut Butter Day, and that goes by UC. But there are other big bills that go by UC. And Dr. Coburn came to office, and he sent out a letter, and he said, guess what? There are 3 rules, 3 or 4, I can't remember. I will hold a bill if you don't have constitutional authority for this bill, if you don't have offsets for the spending in this bill. I can't remember the third one. You're going to put me on the spot. But I think there was a third one. Anyway, I'll probably text you later what it was. And no matter what, that's it. We will hold this until you fix these issues. And he just did it. And everyone knew. And people came to us saying, like members on our side would say, we really want to hold this bill, but, we can't do it because we're kind of too scared to do it. But we just want to make sure you're going to hold it. So just had guts that no one else had because they couldn't take it, right? They just couldn't take kind of the pounding they were going to get. So I don't know if I really still process yet. We haven't had his funeral. We haven't had a service. Staffers, we talk about it, but I'm not sure I've even processed the fact that he's gone, because it happened, all that. But he's probably just such a big impact on my life. And that's his career, but as a person, he was a Christian, and that being a Christian, so we would have a staff meeting every once a month, and it would be like it would kind of be where he mentored all of us. Why are you here? What's your purpose? What are we doing? What is our, how are we serving people? And he was an amazing man. So that's my, not terribly short version of working for Dr.
Sounds like an amazing person, and you actually, I remember you tweeting about a particular story that happened when President Obama was in office, where I think he had either a hug with him or a hug with a Democratic senator, and I remember that because it was talked about, and you were commenting on that. You want to give the context for that, and sort of how that played into what and how it was being talked about now.
Yes. So Dr. Coburn and Carolyn met the Obamas during, I think, when they were at freshman orientation of the Senate. And Carolyn, Dr. Coburn, she's so much fun. She's the most fun person you will ever meet in your entire life. She's amazing. And they all hit it off. And so they were good friends. And they were good friends when Obama was in the Senate, and they did a lot of things together. They did the USA spending site. You can search anything in the government and how it's being funded. That was like their big work together. It's huge right now. But once Obama was elected, he gave, I don't remember what State of the Union it was. I can't remember. But he gave a State of the Union address, and Dr. Coburn gave him a hug. And he definitely got a little flack for it back in Oklahoma. And the reason the story came up is because Dianne Feinstein hugged Lindsey Graham, and the Justice Democrats came out and said, you need to take her off judiciary. She's not doing her job. And I brought it up because Mitch McConnell never came out and said, oh, well, Dr. Coburn should be stripped of his committees. And they're just basic facts. And I think the idea that Barrett's going to get through is a basic fact. And no matter what you do, she's getting through. So there are some people on the left and right who think you should throw a fit and do things, and they deny the reality of the situation. There's nothing you can do. This is how life works. This is reality. Nothing you can do is going to change that. So my statement was, okay, she's hugging Lindsey Graham. There's nothing she could have done that would change the outcome of this. And we should still be able to be civil. You do actually want to be your chairman. That actually really helps when you come to small, tiny things like, can we push this back a week, right? If you're talking about a hearing or whatever, you want to have those sorts of relationships. It really does help. And seniority-wise, you kick off the senior member like Feinstein, and you're in trouble. You're not going to get that seniority. Like in the Senate, seniority really does matter. So that was just my little story about how ridiculous it was.
Right, and I guess it's especially a wise move that Senator Feinstein did that, just because if you're going to be the next chair of the committee, which she might be, then it's really good to sort of have that rapport. And we're going to get to the state of the race in a minute. I just wanted to say that at the time that we're recording this, the Senate is hours away from voting to confirm Justice Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, and I guess I just want to know, like, in terms of the political implications of this, because, there's a lot will be made about how the court's going to rule on various cases that are coming up, but what are the political implications of this? Does this help Republicans, or does this, by firing up supporters of a conservative court, or does it also fire up supporters of a more liberal court who feel like, rightly or wrongly, that Republicans are stacking the court against them?
I think from a political perspective, I think when you saw RBG when she passed away, I think if you go back and look at the numbers, fundraising wise, Democrats raised a ton of money, right? But if Trump loses, this will be a bulwark against any, and there's no packing the court, right? The how it now stands will be a bulwark against any legislation that goes outside the bounds of what is constitutional and what isn't. So this is, you could argue, from Mitch McConnell's standpoint, and it's constitutional. There's nothing that is not constitutional about this. there are a lot of arguments out there that say, oh, it's illegitimate, pointing to the place where this is illegitimate. Anything that's happened is illegitimate. And if this had been Chuck Schumer, the same thing would have happened. So these arguments are ridiculous. I think no matter what, that either side, whoever was putting up their justice and whoever was saying wait till the election is over, both sides would have been making the same arguments that the other side is making right now. That's kind of
right. Okay, I just like to sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to follow up with you after you're done.
No, I was just going to say, but what is supposed to govern us is the Constitution, and this is constitutional. And everyone can make little arguments here and there about this, but I think we should all be very clear about this being constitutional. And also, Chuck Schumer would have absolutely done this had this been Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer.
Right. So I just want to push you on that, just because you argue rightly that what, in my opinion, correctly, that what Republicans are doing is in fact constitutional. And I would actually argue in some ways they're fulfilling a constitutional duty to fill a vacancy on the Supreme Court. Now, in 2016, the Senate noticeably didn't do that. So I just wanted to know, will you? Do you think that the logic that Republicans used to not confirm a justice in 2016 was nonsense, or do you think there was something to that?
Well, I think McConnell had a leg to stand on, in the sense that it is the job of the Senate to what's the exact wording in the Constitution? It is to
confirm,
advise, right?
Yeah, advise and consent.
And so you can either deny that consent or use it, right? Confirm and consent. And McConnell chose, we deny this consent on this. And I understand the argument. Okay, well, how far are you going to take that? Are we now going to go to, well, if ever there is a president who's of a differing party, do we not at all, right? Confirm. Yep. I think that's stretching it, right? I think McConnell's saying, hey, this was used before. It was an argument articulated, and we have every right to deny consent. And I think there's an argument to be made that, and there are a lot of different, we're talking about escalating wars in the courts. The various nominees by the Democrats has been horrendous. The way they treated Bork, the way they treated Kavanaugh, it is better to deny someone consent than to treat them that the way that the Democrats treated them, right? Drag them through the mud and refuse consent in that manner. So that would be one of the things that I would say on that. And I think at least that is taking the high road instead of digging up dirt and kind of pulling them through that. At least it's like, hey, we're denying consent. We're not going to do to you what you've done to some of our nominees.
Right. I guess just my view on this whole thing is a bit more cynical than what you prefer. I think that, let's say theoretically, Trump does in fact win re-election, but Democrats say get a net gain of two seats on election night in the Senate, and then say the two races in Georgia go to a runoff, and because of excitement on the Democratic side, continued negative partisanship against Trump, Democrats flip both seats. That would give them a majority in the Senate, and so I think that what we could be headed to is a situation where whenever the president and the Senate are of different parties, there will be long-term vacancies in the judiciary, not just in the Supreme Court, but, you could make the argument that cabinet positions are you can hire and fire, so, they'll more likely to confirm. But the judiciary, I think we could see a situation where, whenever there are vacancies during opposite control, those are not going to be filled until there's unified control.
Right. And I mean, that's a possibility. That's definitely, someone could say, oh, well, if you take McConnell's rule, we don't have to fill these vacancies, right? I think it's definitely been an escalation. There are instances, Miguel Estrada was treated terribly under the Democrats, but this kind of all goes back to Harry Reid, right? And and it goes back even before that. But these are not good things, and I don't know how you get people to stop escalating the incidents. And I think it's difficult to ask someone, you need to be the one to stop escalating when you have the ability. It is now your turn to make gains. So I wish I had the answer there. I wish I had the answer to that. But even if Trump wins and the Senate is in Democrat hands, I think conservatives would be like right now, we're fine. We're happy with where things are right now.
Right.
And we have we did a great, thank you, Mitch McConnell, for filling every single seat we had. We're fine. You don't want to fill this, fine by us. Don't fill any vacancies. That's we filled it, and okay, granted, they might have some more, but we did a great job. So
Right.
I don't know the answer to that. I wish I did.
Right. And Mitch McConnell, himself, made the point that, the legislative gains we made, Democrats could reverse that. What the justices they've confirmed, that doesn't go away, anytime soon. And I guess I just want to ask, quickly about the state of the race, because the experts, including, from Cook to Crystal Ball to, election Twitter, are all saying that the fundamentals seem to favor Joe Biden. Do you think this race is closer than it looks?
I do think it's closer than it looks. I am aware that, none of the experts say that, but I think they're missing something. I don't know what they're missing, but I think they're missing something. And I don't know how much that Trump will need to make up a lot. So the national polling, there's a big gap. But when you go to individual kind of swing states, that gap is smaller. And it also it's very interesting how demographically things seem to be changing. How Republicans are losing kind of white women, but they're gaining Latino men and Black men, younger Black voters, and I don't think that they can make that up in the margins, but it'll be interesting to see. So you also go back to, and this was probably 3 months ago, and it's been a while, and it's hard for me to remember all these things. I think it was 64% of people said, and this was right in the summer when there were all the riots going on, they didn't feel comfortable expressing their political views. And that wasn't on the liberal side. It wasn't the liberals who didn't feel, expressing their views. These were conservatives who felt this. And so you wonder, I think never Trumpers and liberals are happy to pick up the phone and answer questions. I also question, and I was trying to look this up a little bit yesterday because I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to who got 2018 right in the polling, and I just haven't had time to look into it. But I'm curious, there were a few people who got 2016, and now they definitely are kind of pro-Trump. And I think one of the Nates made the argument, oh, well, they're catering to their base. Well, okay, they can cater to their base, but that doesn't do anything for them after this election. That's not going to make them any money if they're terribly wrong. no one's going to come then, even as, I mean, at least objectively, I wouldn't go to them, even if it's the thing you want to hear now. They got it wrong. You're not going to go to them next election and hire them for anything. So to me, that's not rational. That's not a rational reason. It doesn't do anyone any good to tell them what they want to hear, but be incorrect. You're not going to get any clients that way. So I don't think that's the correct rationale for saying, oh, well, this is the reason why they're off. So, and I think it is such a weird year. I know this is also strange, but it's such a strange, it would not surprise me at all if things did not come out the way we're being told they can.
Right. But in terms of things being looking not as they would be on election night, I would like to point out I actually do expect Trump to possibly be ahead on election night because his voters are going to be voting on the day of, which is going to come in first. Then the mail-in ballots, which are going to disproportionately favor Biden, that's going to come in later. So I actually, I agree with you. I do expect, that Trump would be ahead on election night. And what I would say is, maybe we shouldn't make as much out of that as some people are saying we should, because, what people have pointed out is that there's never really been such thing as quote unquote election night because it always takes longer to certify the official results. And, I do think it probably will take a bit of time before we know who the winner is.
Well, maybe you know the answer. This is another thing that it's so hard to dig into how each state does their mail-in versus day of counting. So I think Arizona they start counting the mail-in ballots that have been mailed in far. And I think those results for whatever when we started our mail-in, because it counted those mail-in, which have been at the beginning they were heavily Democrat. I think those first beginning mail-in days are included in the day of counting, like the day of election day when they're released, those results. And I would love to see, I need to talk to someone, find out what percentage of what they released the day of is mail-in and what percentage is day of. Does that make sense?
Right. And I sort of get the gist of what you're saying, because it's actually worth noting that while, in a lot of states like Florida, North Carolina, the early and mail-in vote favors the Democrats, whereas the election day favors the Republicans. From what I've noticed is that in the past, this will probably not be true this year, but in the past in Arizona, I think it was sort of the reverse.
Right.
Right.
And so that's my question. Well, so that's my point is, okay, so our last Senate race was Sinema McSally, and Sinema had it, just like we're talking about. McSally was ahead, but then up to 2 weeks after, because they were counting the ballots closer to election day and after election day, Sinema caught up, right? But because this year it's flipped, where Democrats are voting at the beginning, and then now Republicans are only starting to catch up. And because I don't know the ratio of what they're going to put out on election day, is it the mail-in from the beginning and then election day? Where do they stop? I don't know the answer to those questions, but I wonder if there will be a bigger portion of, okay, let's call Arizona. Will it look like Biden's ahead in Arizona? And then because Republicans have started voting by mail later, will Trump catch up? I don't know if that's true, but that's something I've been thinking about, because if you look at all the mail-in, Democrats very quickly were ahead, right? We talked about this reverse. So I'm just curious. I don't know how that works, but it's something I need to dig into. But
right. And what we're seeing, I think, in not just in Arizona, but also in places like Florida and elsewhere, is that Democrats have a much bigger lead in the early vote, than they did before. So, question is, to what extent is that a cannibalization of their election day vote because disproportionately Democrats are voting earlier by mail? So
Right.
that'll definitely be something to watch. And just sort of tying this into Arizona, because I do want to talk briefly about, I guess, the future of the Republican Party, because you make a point about Republicans making inroads with Latinos, because I actually think that could be a potential way that Republicans secure electoral college victories. Because from what I'm seeing, Arizona and Georgia, you might disagree with me on this. Those states seem to be going the way of Virginia and Colorado, because in terms of like the demographics, like essentially what's happened in Denver and Northern Virginia is now happening in Atlanta and Phoenix. And so, but I do think that Democrats are overstating the effect of that in a place like Texas. And in and the reason why I like talking about Florida is because the Republican Party in Florida, I'm sorry if I'm throwing a lot at you, but the Republican Party in Florida has has a remarkable ability to adapt to the changing demographics. They do run Spanish language campaigns, and they've been able to win over not just Cuban but also Nicaraguan and Venezuelan immigrants. And so what I'm wondering is, if the Republican Party in Texas adopts that same strategy, they could actually, counteract possible losses in the suburbs. And, for reasons that are, I guess, that, the folks on election Twitter have gotten into, while Georgia and Arizona are stampeding left, North Carolina and Texas could potentially stay with, light red for the foreseeable future. And so yeah. So I guess, it's just a matter of being able to, win over white working class voters in the Midwest, which is trending to the Republicans, while being able to keep Texas and hopefully North Carolina in the GOP column. It's just a thought of a strategy I had for the GOP going forward.
No, and you're absolutely right. And it's amazing to me how you see certain, I think I've seen certain candidates kind of do outreach to our Hispanic communities or Latino communities, and they're definitely right. They're different, like the Florida versus Arizona. These are definitely different types of like Latino voters. But Republicans have not been as good on doing that as they should be. And this is a great demographic. These are people who start their own businesses, and what they want. They don't want like higher tax rates. This is a great demographic for Republicans, and we need to do better at. And they love border security. That's another thing that no one gets. I was on a panel the other night, and I was asked by the moderator. He was like, "Oh, well, how could you possibly see extending like DACA right to border security? Aren't those two different things?" And I was so confused because I'm like, no, like this demographic, they want border security. This is something, and so it's very strange to me. Sometimes I don't think that Democrats understand that. I don't know if that's, maybe they do understand. I don't know what was happening, but that is something that's very important. And I think reaching out to them, I don't know why Republicans are so bad at it. Donald Trump is great at it. And I know he's in your face about it. Like he's very in your face about it. But I mean, even 50 Cent, I don't think he knows about to 50 Cent, but he sees the tax rates and he's like, I'm not doing that. And thankfully, he saw it. But those sorts of things, they matter to everyone. I know people don't like his personality, but there are so many things. Even on Frank Luntz, he had a undecided voter panel, and I think they ended up saying, "Well, we want Donald Trump's policies, but we want Joe Biden's personality." I get that, but it doesn't work that way. That's not life. You have to be able to divide certain things and say, what is good for people? How can we help people the most? And capitalism, like low tax rates, those help people. And I think, oh, I just don't like his tweets. Just put those aside. No one has. You're not being forced to read those. I know that it's not popular, but I should probably say I didn't vote for Donald Trump in 2020. I couldn't stand him. So I'm one of those who came around to Donald Trump.
Right. I sometimes wonder, whether the issues that have helped to, bring Latinos, help them warm up to him, is it more to do with the border, or is it more to do with, say, the economy, or particularly with Venezuelan immigrants, foreign policy? Particularly, his tough talk towards Cuba and Venezuela, and his support, the State Department's recognition of Juan Guaido as a legitimate president. Personally, I think that for some Latinos, that more than anything else has helped to, for them to warm up to Trump more than they otherwise would. But I could be wrong about that.
Wait, what do you think? You think it's
I think it's I wonder if it's maybe less to do with immigration and more to do with foreign policy and the economy. That's helped
yeah,
Latinos to warm up to him.
I'm not saying it's mostly immigration. I'm saying it's mostly the economy. Is what I think it is. Because at the end of the day, the things that impact you the most are I think what voters usually vote on. So I think the economy is usually the number one driver. This year is very strange. I think Donald Trump would have been. I think it would have been right now. We would be talking about Donald Trump ahead of Joe Biden had it not been for the pandemic.
I agree with you. I actually I agree with you about that. I think that the pandemic is a big reason why the race is as it is currently. And I as well as Trump has done, my assessment personally has been as much good as Trump has done for the economy, his response to the pandemic, quite frankly, leaves a lot wanting. And so I think that's the big reason why. And I agree with you. Had it not been for that, I think he'd be really competitive for re-election at the moment. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that is a very, I think people who, and I actually don't know if you worked in government, but having worked in government, this is a very easy thing to say. But I know government, I know how it works. There's nothing that Joe Biden has said that he would have done differently from Donald Trump, other than the mask mandate, right? Our government does not work quickly, and I think I do not believe that anyone would have had vastly different results as a president than Donald Trump. I just don't believe it. I think you could say, okay, well, Joe Biden would have modeled masks better, or he would have tried a mask mandate, right? But that was unconstitutional. And I'm not sure even modeling masks better. You have everyone around Donald Trump who was modeling masks better. And there's so much of a state level going on. And people, preserve their livelihood. You saw lockdowns. I don't know about you, but in our state, people were locking down before they even asked people to lock down. Did you notice that?
I wasn't paying attention specifically to the state by state response, but I take your word for it.
Well, anyway, so that's just my, people think, oh, it would have been handled so much better with a different person. And having seen government responses and looked at them, it's just usually, not true. But anyway, that's
Right.
aside from that.
Right, and I guess a lot of people, people who feel, have misgivings about the CDC. I would like to point out the CDC does not set mask policies. Those are set by state and county and local governments.
Right.
But anyway, I know that, having followed you on Twitter, I know that the whole QAnon conversation is one that can be infuriating. It's certainly one that I don't like having, but it's the thing that maybe I'm just overreacting to it, but it just worries me that many of us fought a battle to keep QAnon out of Congress, and we lost in that one Georgia race. And so I guess the worry that I have is that Trump is his presidency is not forever, and he will be whether it's January 2021 or 2025, he will be out of office eventually. The worry I have is that QAnon, his support for QAnon. I say support just because he says, they're fighting pedophilia. And for those who, I guess, for people who sort of understand the origins and the nature of that movement, I guess I am a bit worried that is what the future of how many people who consider themselves Republicans, could say that that's what they think. And I just maybe I'm just overreacting about it. What do you think? Is this something that Republicans should denounce, or is this not really a big deal?
Okay, well, so here's the thing. I don't know much about, so I looked briefly into QAnon, right? But I haven't done a deep dive on QAnon. And I guess because, and you feel free to correct me because I
Sure.
don't know much about it. I guess I don't know. Is there something that is this huge, massive threat about them? Now, I think there are people out there there are a lot of people out there who hold views that are not based in reality, and there are a lot of people in Congress who hold views that are not based in reality, right? I don't. I haven't. There are a lot of things that I want to do research on and find out about. QAnon has not been a motivating factor for me, so I haven't looked into it. I know it's something the media asks about all the time, but it hasn't been something that there hasn't been an event to me that's made me be like, oh, I gotta figure out what that is, right?
Right.
Deep dive into this, right?
Right, and I haven't done a deep dive, like that kind of deep dive either. It's just something I guess maybe I guess I maybe know a bit more about, but that's probably all I can say. It's just that this feels a bit personal to me because I was really excited to see some truly quite frankly awful Republicans like Steve King and Steve Watkins go down to defeat, and it sort of feels a bit of a crushing blow to see someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene get into Congress at the same time. Especially when you consider some of the quite frankly appalling things that she said. It just, I guess maybe that in that way it feels sort of personal.
Okay, I don't know who this person is.
Okay. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is a Republican running for Congress in Georgia. I'm not sure if you've heard of her.
Maybe she's like, people have been saying she's like the QAnon. Is she blonde?
Yes, that's her.
Okay, I've only seen passing things about her. I do not know about her. But I'm there's only so much I'm sorry, I can focus on.
Right, no, and I'm totally sorry with putting you on the spot on that. I just wanted to talk about.
No, it's fine. Here's the thing. I guess my position on this is, I think people tend to hold some crazy views, and I've seen it in Congress. I've heard people who are, nuts. If we see that, but it also depends on. So there's a difference between these are racist views and these are just people who are nutty, right, and a little off. Like I know staffers who don't think we landed on the moon. I think that's a nutty position to hold, right? But it's also not something that I'm going to get in a fight about, right? I think that if we didn't land on the moon, to me, I'm like, this is not something I'm going to argue with you about, right? But if you hold a racist position, that's something we're definitely going to call out and have words with. Again, I guess I'm looking for on a QAnon front. Do I think these people, from what there's this grand conspiracy, right, for child pedophilia, right, among world leaders? Do I think that is crazy? Yes, right? So would I say someone who believes in that is crazy? Yes. And do I think this is not something that I think that as Republicans we should embrace? Yes. Right? Not so all those things are, how much time do we spend doing it, right? Is I guess where I get right, like, okay, I think that's wrong. We should call it out and say that's not right. Show me some facts. And that's another thing. Talking to people about this, I think there are people who hold these views. And there's a way in which you can see do they just hold them because they were kind of talked into them, or do they hold them because they are actually a little off and they believe them? And so you say, what's the evidence behind it? Why do you believe it? And so sometimes you can talk people who have those crazy opinions out of it by asking what the evidence is. And sometimes you can then prove to yourself, no, they're just crazy. So I think there are different ways to do that with sort of nutty opinions. And I do think, yes, okay. And I think that QAnon is crazy and it's not right, but I also want to look into it and see, how did it come from? What's going on, right? Why did this start? What happened? Are they? But this also goes back to, why is the media bringing it up so much? So this is another issue I have. I am so irate with the media right now. I think they're failing to do their, and I guess one of the reasons I brought this up on was because there's so many real questions to answer. And if there was nothing going on in the world, okay, let's talk about QAnon. That's fine. But there's so many things that need to be focused on that we're not focusing on. And that's where I brought that up. Every single interview, it's brought up, and real questions aren't being brought up. And so that's why it was kind of bothering me that it was brought up in, I think it was his town hall, because every single time it's this question for him. And literally, I think in my tweet where I brought it up, I was like, I barely know what it is, you know?
Right. And I guess all I'll say is that we took out Republicans like Steve King and others. We just have our work cut out for 2022, and
yeah. Well, I mean, and here's the thing. Yes, I think if they're crazy, but my question, I guess, is, and I don't know, but okay, so what are the bad things that she said?
Okay, so the truth is, when people describe her as racist, I don't think she is any more racist than what some other extreme Republicans have said. She has said,
well, racist, then. Yeah.
Right. What I guess I don't want to. I want to make gifts. Say if I can quote her as accurately as possible. She said that if she were African American, she would be proud to see a Confederate statue. She's basically she's called George Soros a Nazi. Now, I guess there could be a debate about whether that is anti-Semitism. I personally think it is, but there are people who don't like George Soros who would think maybe it's not. But I guess basically that's what I'll throw out as in terms of examples of. Also, she's taken issue with. I think she said what I think what I personally think are particularly racist comments against Muslims, and but she is by no means the first person to say what she said about them. But for that reason, I just think that she's particularly awful, and I can forward you the exact quotes that if and the video that as soon as I find it. Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean I definitely yeah, I mean those don't sound like great things, and those are definitely things that we should not be promoting or having people in Congress who hold those views. So I completely agree with you.
For sure.
The QAnon, I think, yes, we should not be embracing these theories at all. But I also wish that I knew more about it, and I wonder where it came from.
Right, and
maybe it's all just love Donald Trump.
I appreciate you letting me put you on the spot about that, but I really hope that at least we can make the champions of conservatism, I guess, the best people that we can possibly field in that fight.
Yeah, well, and I think we do a good. Well, I think Republicans take pride on the fact that we kick out people in our party like Steve that stripped him of his committee, and I think there are people who have made anti-Semitic comments on the Democrat side who still
for sure.
And so all of us who supported getting rid of Steve King always say, well, you know what? Yeah, Steve King was really bad, and we wanted to get rid of him. We wanted to get him out. So why don't you do the same to the bad people people on your side. And that's what really bothers me with this narrative that, oh, the right like courts and keeps all their, racist people. And it's garbage. It's just not true. They hold on to like anti-Semites and embrace them and keep them around. So
Exactly.
and it just so I absolutely, and I think I do think Republicans do a great job of saying, no, this is not who we are, and we push them out and we push them away. And so we need to keep doing that. So any of those candidates who do similar things, absolutely. And I will look into this one from Georgia.
For sure. And hopefully the next time we talk about this, we'll both be better informed about it.
Yes.
Anyway, I guess I just I wanted to thank you for coming on. I was hoping we can end on a bit of a more positive note, but I'm really glad that we had this conversation, and I'm really glad we got to talk about all of this, and I really do hope you'll come back and we'll talk more about this.
Yes, I had a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and again, for those who are watching, if you are an American citizen, be sure to make sure you're registered to vote, and be sure to cast your ballot in this election.